So the first one is the selector master. Now, from a selection perspective, I think the first thing is to identify where the data resides, where in the tables. So from a data view perspective, the data is available. It's views that are created in the database, so fairly straightforward. And then it's your standard selection criteria. In my scenario here, you can see I've been very specific about selecting certain documents in order to meet the requirements. Okay, so that's the selector. The next master that you will see, bear in mind, if I just go back to the main menu, the structured output icon is really just, you won't see the selector here, and that's basically because the selectors live in the finance area. But what you do see is all these structured output specific masters. So the next one then is the manipulation master. Here I've just opened up one of the manipulation masters that have been configured. The key bit of information, and this is really what drives how the data is being transformed, is this transformation type, which has been predefined by Unit 4. The development teams have worked together with the Avalara development teams in defining that transformation type. And then when you look at the mappings tab, this is where I guess a lot of the magic happens. And if I scroll down, so essentially down the left-hand side, you've got the destination fields within the Avalara table, and here's the source fields from within the financials table. And you know, fairly straightforward, one-to-one mapping. However, there's a clever bit of functionality here that allows you to do some transformations as well. So the different types of manipulation that you can do, you can concatenate a number of fields from the source to connect them and pass it on to the destination. You can do lookups, various different options, change, reverse the sign, etc. And so if I've defined a lookup, and then you look at something like, if you look at the lookup setup, you know, I'm basically saying if the document code is SINB or PINB, then I need you to transform that to a 0 or 1, which is clearly what is required in the Avalara destination table in order to pass that on to HMRC. So and the good thing is, moving forward, this will, you know, this is something that'll be configurable, so when things change, we'll be able to make those transformations you know, without going back to redeveloping the software in any way. So once the manipulation master has been defined, the mappings have been defined, the next master that needs to be configured is the process master. So remember, the process master is nothing more than tying together where the selector is, where we're going to output the file. So quite straightforward. One of the things that is defined in here, so you can see the selector code is defined. If I go down a little bit further, where are we going to output the file? What's the file name going to be? The companies that we are selecting. So quite straightforward, standard Unit 4 financials functionality. If I then just quickly go to the output repository, and I just click on that, you can see that we've created a folder where we will be populating the different types of output that will then be passed onto Avalara. So I ran one for payables a little bit earlier, so you can see this folder right now only has a payables output file. If I then go back into running of the process itself, and I show the example of running the receivables process not earlier on was the payables, and I run the little process. So bear in mind, this doesn't have to be run manually. This can be run, scheduled to run. So I now have some feedback. Structured output has successfully completed. If I go back into my repository and I reload the repository, I anticipate the additional output file to be populated, and there you can see these have now been added in addition to what you saw earlier on. So just then to have a very quick look of what that file looks like. So it's a straightforward XML file. This is the file, this is the information that Avalara will receive. So, and there's various ways obviously of connecting Avalara to the source data in order to populate the Avalara VAT reporting application from where the VAT reporting to HMRC will be done.
So I'm here in Avalara VAT reporting. Avalara VAT reporting is our VAT compliance solution that complies with the new Making Tax Digital requirements. It's also a solution that takes care of all of your other filing requirements, both in the UK through the supplemental filings, such as Intrastat, EEC listings, etc., and all of the other requirements in the rest of the EU, so local listings, reverse charge listings, any transactional reports, such as the Extra Metro, the SAFT in Poland, all of that complexity covered within the solution. On top of that, of course, a bunch of non-EU countries too, maybe 20, 25 non-EU countries. What I want to do is take the files that Craig has produced there and load them into VAT reporting, and then talk about how the transactions that are in those files are validated by the solution before calculating the VAT return and then ultimately submitting to HMRC. I'm going to manually load this data. I have the two files that's used here. Keep in mind, of course, we've spoken about the connector that we have between the two applications. So that means we are generating the XML out of Unit 4, the two formats I just saw a moment ago on my screen, and they would then be sent to the Avalara API. This is an automated process. So there's no need for you to be doing what I've just done. And this is done on a scheduled basis entirely automatically. In VAT reporting, I have my list of filings here. And click on one of these open returns. So I go to my VAT return, and it's going to show me the calculated VAT return based on the invoices that I've just processed. Okay, so if I want to look at the invoices that I just processed, I can come over here to my process collection documents and see my two files, and it gives me the result of that processing. So I have two invoices here on my receivable side that are in error. The other 16 have processed into my VAT return, passing all of the 160 plus validations that we do. Likewise, on the purchase side, I have 98 invoices that have passed all of the 160 plus validations that we do. So that means then that my VAT return is containing all of those invoices that have passed all of those checks, but will not contain any invoice that failed one of those checks. Okay, and the method for going to correct an invoice that has failed a check can either be that of going back to your ERP, making a change in your ERP, so back in Unit 4, and then having that invoice automatically being picked up and processed back into VAT reporting. There's some controls you have in the system to delete any duplicate documents, of course. And you can make some changes directly in the system too, if you go to errors and warnings up here, and then make a change if you have the credentials and the authority to do so to that document to reprocess back into the VAT return. But I've got my calculated VAT return here. I'm happy to go ahead and submit my VAT return. Of course, there are many other things I might want to do. This is just a very, very short demo. You know, I want to do some data analysis. I'd want to do a reconciliation back to my general ledger. I'd want to raise any adjustments to my return for bad debt relief, or perhaps I'm partially exempt. All these things are covered, but I'm just going to jump straight into the MTD submission part here, as that is the focus for today's demonstration. So I've got my calculated VAT return, assuming I've done all the other things I want to do to make sure that that is accurate. I can then come down here, save my fixed formats. So that's the JSON format for Making Tax Digital. So I can come down here to my return preparation. I can choose the format that I wish. And for MTD in UK, it's the fixed format. That's the JSON format. And then I can view my filing. It's now going to start generating the VAT return in that JSON format for me. Here's my JSON format. I can submit my VAT return. Before I actually submit it, it's going to summarize those box values for me once more, just as a final review, and then give me this legal declaration. So this is mandatory text that HMRC require a software vendor like Avalara to include if they're going to comply with MTD. So I'll say OK. This is now submitting the VAT return to HMRC's API, and I get a download of that return down here. So that's now been submitted. Okay, what that'll also do is it will lock the period in VAT reporting, so I can't resubmit the same return. There's a process for reopening the period. Here I'm in open returns. I can go to my closed returns, and if I've got the authority, I can then reopen that return. But it also means any invoice that's processing into a closed period is not going to go into that return and kind of get lost forever because, you know, not looking at a closed period again. It go into errors and warnings, and you can see those invoices that are posting to a closed period. But that's submitted. I can also come over here and I've got the ability to look at any previously submitted returns. So I've got a history here of all of the different filings that have been made. So this is not pulling from our database. This is called to one of HMRC's APIs, which there are 5, and it's saying what are the outstanding obligations and what is my submission history. I can then open up any filed returns and see the PDF rendering of that VAT return on screen. Another 2 APIs that we support, so we support all 5 of these, of course, so payments and liabilities. So I can call HMRC and say what payments have been made for this period, and it will list those payments out for me. Just for completion, let me show the liabilities as well. Okay, so that was a very, very quick overview of Avalara VAT reporting, complying with the Making Tax Digital requirements. There's a lot of granularity and depth to this solution I've obviously had no chance to cover today. But I hope that's given you a flavor, and I hope it can give you some confidence that if you need Avalara to support you through your Unit 4 connector to the system, you can then comply with the requirements that are upcoming for Making Tax Digital. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.